What remained of the Burgundians were rounded up in 443 and force-marched south, where they were settled south of Lake Geneva. Aetius then led Roman forces against rebellions, incursions, and criminality of every shape and size. Through the mid-440s, he fought the Franks and Alans, both of whom were trying to carve out larger niches for themselves than Aetius could responsibly allow. He also had to deal with homegrown gangs of marauders, who had grown into fairly large and organized bands. Their homes overrun and the economy in tatters, many dispossessed Gallo-Romans joined up with these gangs and started causing all sorts of additional havoc for Aetius, not just with their persistent harassment of what was left of the law-abiding citizens of the region, but also because they were a constant threat to his supply and communication lines, as Aetius tried to wage small-scale wars on multiple fronts against multiple enemies. But despite the fact that he had so many balls in the air, by all accounts, Aetius did a remarkable job holding things together. Sure, he dropped North Africa, which I should mention is the single biggest criticism leveled against him by historians in an otherwise unanimous flood of glowing praise. But other than that one glaring omission, he managed the European provinces about as well as you could hope, given the resources at his disposal. At the very least, it's impressive that there was even still a Western Empire for Attila to invade here in a couple of years, and even more impressive than that there was still a Western Empire left after Attila came and went, which Aetius gets and deserves most of the credit for. Speaking of Attila, after waltzing through the Middle Empire as easily as if they had entered in some kind of cheat code, he and his brother led the Huns back north across the Danube in 444. After settling back down, however, the nearly inevitable result of having co-rulers occurred, and the brothers appear to have turned on one another, each seeking sole control of the Hun nation. At least, that's what we presume happened, because in 445, Bleda suddenly drops dead, and the universal assumption is that Attila had his brother killed. Now the sole ruler of the premier military power in the wider Mediterranean world, Attila kicked back to enjoy the fruits of his labor. Except that Theodosius and his ministers down in Constantinople decided that the cracking of solidarity between the two brothers hinted at a larger fracturing of Hun unity. Piecing together the cause and effect of all this is no easy job, but it looks like the Romans decided to test their theory of internal discord among the Huns by abruptly cutting off the indemnity payments. Or, based on some math that we'll get to in a second, that they never actually started sending them at all, counting on the new rivalry between Attila and Bleda to keep the Huns too busy to worry about a few missed carts of gold. By 447, though, Attila had emerged victorious from the power struggle, consolidated his authority over the whole Hun nation, and was now free to wonder where his money is. The reason it is questioned whether the Romans ever sent along a payment after the settlement of 442-443 is because of the initial demand Attila delivered to the Romans in early 447. His ambassadors to Constantinople presented a bill to Theodosius for 6,000 pounds of gold, which, when you do the math, covers 4 years' worth of missed Roman payments. The Romans rejected the demand. They had had 4 years to consolidate their power along the Danube, and were itching to see if they could permanently refuse the Hun legbreakers. So in early 447, the Roman bill still unpaid, Attila once again led his forces on a sweeping invasion of the Central Empire. Once again, the Roman forces were made to look like fools. 4 years of planning and entrenchment had amounted to exactly nothing. A Roman field army met the Huns near the river Eutus, and though they were able to inflict more damage on the Huns than any Roman force had ever before inflicted on Attila, the legions were soon overwhelmed and scattered, which left the road to Constantinople wide open. And that was exactly the road Attila intended to take. It was time to plant a flag in the emperor's backyard. And his timing could not have been better, because on January the 27th, 447 AD, a massive earthquake struck Constantinople, and, you guessed it, the Theodosian walls were severely damaged. Broken, crumbled, with enormous gaping holes. This looked like it could spell the end for the capital city. Attila the Hun of an army that had thus far proved totally invincible. And the only hope of the city, the Theodosian walls, was now a broken shell of its former self. And it's not like the people of Constantinople were going to get the fortifications rebuilt before the Huns arrived, unless, of course, they did. In one of the most remarkable feats of the ancient world, engineers and laborers, half out of their minds with fear, worked around the clock at a frantic pace to put the Theodosian walls back together. In March of 447, with Attila still maybe 100 miles out, the last brick was laid. In just 2 months, the citizens of Constantinople had completely rebuilt the Theodosian walls, and as a result, they now stood a reasonably good chance of turning Attila back. Fear, as has been shown in study after study, is probably the single greatest motivator in all the world. When Attila reached Constantinople in mid-447, a Roman army was mustered to oppose him, but the Huns promptly blew through them without even breaking a sweat. This was almost to be expected. Then everyone held their breath to see what would happen next. Would the new walls hold? The Huns attacked and were repulsed. They attacked some more and were repulsed some more. There was nothing the Huns could do. The Theodosian walls were impregnable. Attila had taken Sirmium and Nisus and Philippopolis and every other Roman city he had ever laid eyes on, but when he hit the Theodosian walls, he was stopped dead in his tracks. So, just like every other invading army that would come and go over the next 1,000 years, the Huns were forced to withdraw from Constantinople. But just because there was this one thing on Earth that could stop the Huns, that didn't mean that there was anything else on Earth that could stop the Huns. By the end of 447, Attila was on the other side of the Sea of Marmara, near the entrance to the Hellespont, when he encountered a second branch of the Eastern Army. This army fared no better than their brothers had fared at Eutus and in front of Constantinople. The Huns blasted them to smithereens. The East was now essentially left without any field armies, and aside from the Theodosian walls, left without any way to defend itself. What in the world were they going to do now? That question is going to have to wait for next time. And unfortunately, next time is going to have to wait a few weeks. I know you are as surprised to hear this as I am to say it, but the next History of Rome tour has arrived. We will be gone from February the 24th through March the 6th, so the next episode of the History of Rome is tentatively scheduled for March the 12th, which will be the Sunday after I get back. I'm hoping I'll be able to turn that episode around for you so I don't disappear off the grid forever, but life is quite a bit more hectic these days than it used to be, so you never know. If the episode on March 12th is not going to happen, I promise I'll let you know as soon as I know, and I also promise that I'll have a darn good reason for not doing it. For those of you who are going on the tour, I can't wait to meet you. For those of you who aren't going on the tour, be sure to stop by thehistoryofrometour.com. Drop us a line and let us know that you're super sad you aren't going this time around, but can't wait to find out when the next tour is so that you and your whole family can come along. The History of Rome tour is super fun, and I think everyone who has done it so far will attest to that. So, I will see you in a few weeks, and for some of you, I will see you in a few days. This week's episode is brought to you by Audible. As you know, Audible is the internet's leading provider of audio entertainment with over 100,000 titles to choose from. When you're done with this episode, go to audiblepodcast.com/Rome. That again, audiblepodcast.com/Rome. By going to that address, you qualify for a free book download when you sign up for a, hey, this is new, so pay attention, 30-day trial membership. There is no obligation to continue the service, and you can cancel anytime and keep the free book download. You can also keep going with one of the monthly subscription options and get great deals on all future audiobook purchases. This week, I'm going to go with a recommendation from listener Andrew, and a book that I myself enjoyed immensely. Assassination Vacation by Sarah Vowell. Part travelogue, part obscure presidential history, Sarah Vowell road trips to the sites of various presidential assassinations. Her distinct voice is distinct, so be aware, but it does feature an all-star cast of cameo voices at no extra charge. Just remember to go to audiblepodcast.com/Rome so that they know who sent you. Hello, and welcome to the History of Rome. Episode 171, The Gathering Storm. Oh my goodness, the History of Rome tour is so much fun. We don't have firm dates for the next round, but historyofrometour.com. Check it out. It is so much fun. Also, as you may have noticed, a combination of jet lag and conflicting responsibilities have conspired to leave this episode a bit shorter than usual, but we will be back in full effect next week, I promise. Okay, where were we? Ah yes, it's 447 AD, and Attila the Hun is loose in the Central Empire. The Theodosian walls have managed to hold him off, else was able to say the same thing. Forts, garrisons, cities, armies, all overrun, ransacked, and left dazed and traumatized. But consistent with the standard Hun policy of the last 15 years, Attila was not actually interested in annexing Roman territory, or in trying to conquer the empire per se. As you'll recall, the whole trigger for this lightning campaign had been Constantinople's experiment with not paying the indemnity that they had agreed to, an experiment Attila hoped Constantinople now recognized to be a complete failure. Also consistent with standard Hun policy, Attila took the opportunity to jack up the going rate for keeping the Huns out of the field from 1,400 to 2,100 pounds of gold per year. And, oh yeah, we're going to need that 6,000 pounds of gold you already owe us up front. Left with no other choice, and probably just happy that there was a choice, besides the Huns kicked the crap out of us indefinitely, Theodosius II agreed to the terms. Now, I haven't really talked about this yet, but the Huns' indemnity policy goes a long way towards establishing them as something more advanced than your average snatch-and-grab barbarians. They were not at all interested in killing the goose that laid their golden egg. Sure, sometimes you had to go down and kick the goose around a bit if it tries to stop laying golden eggs, but you don't kill it. You let it live.